making sure that these friendships do not become particular friendships that can disrupt the flow of life in the convent. And there's then other things about the value of women in A Way of Perfection. I have here a copy of her, a photograph of some part of what she wrote that was scratched out by the censor, but we have seen it now, where she's saying, she's talking to Jesus, "The day will come, my King, when all will be done. I do not speak for myself, but I want to read just this little piece." Again, she's saying that men who are judges, because they're sons of Adams, they judge women, but women have a lot to contribute, etc. And see, it was not only Mary, but also Mary Magdalene and some of the other women who stayed at the foot of the cross rather than male disciples who ran away. So she's trying to talk about this. In the Foundations, she talks about nuns are spared the slavery of married women, the not having to obey a husband all the time, etc. And she presents cases of women who pretty much ran away from their families to enter Carmel because they wanted the freedom to have their own life of prayer rather than being forced to marry someone. And there's particularly one she talks about, Doña Casilda, who was made to marry one of her uncles so the money would stay in the family. And she said, "Oh no," and ran into the convent. So anyway. Okay, one of the interesting things, though, Teresa is talking, as I said, against particular friendships. But there was a young nun, her name was Ana de San Bartolomé, who was illiterate when she came into the convent. One of the things Teresa asked was all nuns learn to read, because it's very important to be able to read. So Anna learned to read and write in the convent, and Teresa by then was getting fairly old. She died at 67, which at that time was very old age. Right now it feels like a baby to me. Anyway, so she broke an arm, Teresa did, and could not write well. So Anna became her secretary, and she may have become more than her secretary. And it's not clear, but we know some things very concretely about this. For one thing, in the constitutions, Teresa had said very clearly that a way to avoid particular friendships was to not let any nun go into the cell, into the room of another nun without permission. But this is Anna writing in her own autobiography after Teresa's death. Since I took the habit, she brought me to her cell, and for the rest of her life, I was with her. When Teresa was dying, one of the things that happened, she couldn't talk. And every time Anna left the room, Teresa got very anxious, with her eyes darting in all directions and sort of heaving to get Anna to come back into the room. And in fact, Teresa died in Anna's arms. My guess is it was purely emotional. Because again, see, part of what happened then is that until the late 19th century, if there's no penis, there's no sex. So forget nuns in the convent and particular friendships and any of that. there's lots of correspondence among women in the 19th century, sometimes married women, sometimes single, whatever, who wrote passionate letters to their friends, slept with them in the same bed, hugged them all the time. And in fact, husbands were very happy because that meant their wives were being faithful. As long as you are so in love with another woman, you're not going to be unfaithful. So it was something that was very okay for women to have some of these contact. So the word lesbian is a little fuzzy here because was she not, was this a lesbian? We don't know. Okay. So Anna, after her death, after Teresa's death, wrote that it was only after Teresa died that she felt emotionally free to love other people. That's interesting, right? Okay, whatever that means, again. But Teresa kept very intense correspondence, and so did Anna after Teresa died, with other nuns with very strong expressions of love. Things like, you know that I don't love anyone like I love you, so there's no reason for you to be jealous because no one means as much to me as you do. You know, it's very, in a way, explicit, whatever it is explicit about. And I have here a picture from Teresa and Anna, which holding hands, which supposedly explains how saintly Anna was, and in fact she's in process of beatification right now, because she was so close to Teresa. There's a very interesting book, you may be interested in reading it. The author is Sherry Velasco, Velasco, and the title of the book is Lesbians in Early Modern Spain. And there are some things about Teresa, particularly chapter 5 in the book, that is very much focused on that. Okay, so let's go to the melancholic nuns, and then we'll have some questions. Melancholy was this thing that meant practically anything that had to do with mental illness. It had to do mostly with depression, but probably it may have to do with other things. And of course, we now know that bipolar disorder implies both things. So melancholic nuns tended to have very intense emotions. It may be when they were in the manic phase. It's hard to tell, really, what was going on there, because it's supposed to be the humor on your body that determined that you became melancholic, which now we know it's chemistry, so she wasn't so far away when she thought, I mean, it's not humorous, but it's something that is physical in a way. She tells the prioress, and this is the first time that this is said, and it's been used in psychology here and there, that Teresa is the first person who says, when these nuns are having some visions, it has nothing to do with the devil or has nothing to do with whatever, they have to be treated as if they were ill, como enfermas. So it's a way of saying this is mental illness. Of course, she didn't have that concept, but they have to be treated como enfermas, as if they were ill, rather than getting into these things about, you know, devils and other possessions and those things that other people may have. So there are different ways of treating them. And one of them is some of them don't realize they're ill. So the prioress needs to be very firm and do things like not let them do as much prayer. So they don't get into their personal elucubrations about whatever may be going on, either for mania, for depression, or whatever. Also, let them eat meat. Carmel nuns are vegetarian, and if they eat any animal protein is fish, make them eat meat and do activities rather than spend so much time praying, so they don't get into all this thinking that, you know, feeds whatever is going on with their melancholia. So a person who's recommending prayer for the nuns is asking for less prayer because the prayer time can lead to this thing. Teresa has, to finish, a lot of importance in spirituality and theology. She continues to be relevant, and she's been sort of taken up by people who are not Catholic. A couple of the translators of her works and her life are Jewish women, and so she's an interesting person that way. Now, was Teresa a lesbian? Okay, again, how do we understand lesbian? We have to understand the cultural and historical context. If the adolescent experience she describes was with girls, she still wasn't too happy about it. So, but the strong affection for Anna and other nuns gives food for thought. So I have other things here, and some written resources that I could share. We can do that later if you're interested in looking at this. This is what I have prepared, so now it's your time to talk. Questions?